Well, hello there, and welcome to the episode 2 of the Super Mayo Rants quote unquote podcast. I just want to begin by saying thank you to everybody that tuned in to that first episode. It does mean a lot for me to hear, people that have tuned in and checked out, even if you listen for like just a little bit, or just clicked on it and exited out, whatever it may be. I just want to say I appreciate you and thank you for the support. And I do want to preface this episode by saying, if you do want to see more podcast episodes, just make sure you like the video and subscribe to be notified for any future episodes. And if you have any suggestions or feedback, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for things to improve. In fact, I actually received this comment from Sparky. Hopefully, Richard will put it up there on the video when he goes to edit. But Sparky requested a Subway Surfers gameplay footage to keep them focused on the video. So I'm happy to announce that if everything worked out in post-production, there should be a TV in this room now, and with exclusive Subway Surfers gameplay. So you're welcome, Sparky, and if you guys have any other suggestions, feel free to let me know either in the comments or in Discord. If you want to join Discord, the link is in the description below. Before I kind of get into this episode, I just want to say, if I'm a bit, let me see, what's the right word? If I don't have as much energy as potentially the last episode, it's probably because I'm still in a state of shell shock. For some of you who may know, I do work at a university. I don't want to disclose too much information about it, or what my job entails, or what I do. But I work at a university, and I was helping out with an event on campus yesterday evening, and it was bid day for a sorority on campus, right? And yesterday, what I was tasked to do is to help direct traffic following, basically before the event, but then mostly like after the event, because apparently what happens, which I didn't realize until I got there, was that all the people that are like rushing sororities, apparently they go through like this week long, like kind of like, I guess, recruitment process. I don't know. I've never been a part of sorority. I don't know how that works, but they go through this like week long like recruitment process, and then on bid day, that's when they find out like which house they're in. I don't know if this is kind of like Hogwarts in a way, I guess, Slytherin, Hufflepuff, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw, whatever, try Delta, Alpha, I don't know. Anyway, so I was tasked with like helping traffic, just like letting only the people that are supposed to be in before the event, and then once we're ready to let everybody in, then we open the gates and everything. So it's just kind of like monitoring traffic. So that part went well. The beginning went well. It was the end that was just kind of like, I wouldn't say it didn't go bad. It was just like, I literally went into a state of shock. I actually went into a state of shock. I was frozen. Basically, they had me following the event. What happens is that the sorority girls go into this like gymnasium. They attend this event. There's like, it's just a bunch of like hype leading up to all these like pledges, like opening up the letters to see which house or sorority they got admitted to. But there's just like a bunch of chants, and just getting people hyped up. And then once they open the letters, what they'll do is they'll go outside, they'll find the leaders for those houses that they've been appointed to, or selected by, and then once they all gather, then they'll go down this like long strip of road like on the campus. And when I say they go down this long strip of road, they don't just like walk down, they literally sprint. And you have to keep in mind, this is like approximately, what was relayed to me was that it was about 2,000 students in attendance. And this is like a small, like, it's probably like the size of the road is probably like the size of like maybe like a 2 or 3 lane like highway road. And so basically, once they receive the letters, they'll go outside the building, the gymnasium, and they'll meet with their like chapters. And then once everybody's there in their chapter, then they all literally all these groups together sprint down this road, and my responsibility among like a couple other people was to direct the traffic and to make sure they go in the right areas. And what ended up happening, I was like, okay, that's easy. That's not going to be difficult because we just don't want it to be chaotic and make sure they don't go all over the place. Just we don't want to create disruptions to the rest of the campus, right? So they everything goes well. They all get their letters. They run out. They meet their groups, and they start charging down this walkway on campus. And I was tasked with being at the end to make sure they go up like a certain street. And oh my god, like I saw them. I was like walking to my seat. It all happened very quickly. I think we were anticipating having a little bit more time to station up. I think our leaders probably thought that there was going to be more time that was going to elapse before they had the pledges open up their letters. So we weren't able to get into our stations as quickly as we probably should have been. Which was fine. It's not that big of a deal, but so I ended up getting to my station a little bit later because I'm like all the way down, right? So I have to like actually I was starting to walk down to my station, but I turn around and I just see a bunch of these like these like sorority girls in these like dresses with these signs of like the chapters that they're part of. And they're kind of off in the distance, so they just seem like a little bit small in the distance. And then I just got like, I just kept like walking a little bit forward, like step by step, and just taking a peek back. And then once I started looking back again, I'm like, wait a minute, oh no, this is getting bigger. Oh, they're getting bigger. And so and then I realized I need to hightail it because I'm not at my point yet. So I ended up just. I start like speed walking, and then I look back and I realize they're getting bigger and bigger. I'm like, oh shit. So I literally just hightail, and then I literally just hightail. I'm Forrest Gump running, like arms by my side, like, sifting through the wind, trying to make myself as aerodynamic as possible, just to get to my point. By the time I get to the point, literally, I kid you not, 2 seconds, right after, the first group comes towards me. I get disoriented because I'm seeing this whole herd of people. I mean, you're talking about like 2,000 students, and they're not just like running, they're screaming. Oh my god, they are screaming at the top of their lungs. I kid you not, I was in a state of shock. Listen, you have to understand, I have previous experience as a crisis counselor, right? I've worked with people, who have called into like the 988 like crisis line and like my state's like local like helpline and things like that. And I've worked with people who are going through like mental health crises, like at the highest risk level that you can imagine. And I was trained for that. I was comfortable doing that. I never got thankfully I never felt I never had like an experience where I was just kind of like frozen. But this, on the other hand, I was frozen. I didn't know what to do. It's just a bunch of screaming sorority girls with these signs just charging at you, and you're trying to get their attention, and you're trying to be like, no, don't go that way, go this way. But they're all like in their own world, and they're just so like, you could just tell that their minds are all over the place. And so like just trying to corral them and just trying to get them to go to the right area that they're supposed to go to, that was just it was just I felt like I was screaming at the top of my lungs. Not at the top of my lungs, but I was screaming. I was like, hey guys, don't go that way, go this way. Nobody was listening to me. I think there was a couple groups that listened to me. And there's a couple groups that knew beforehand where to go, but you could tell that there were some that just didn't know, and they're just following the rest of the crowd or just going their own way. And so there's like a couple that trickled like outside of like where they were supposed to go. Most of them went down the correct route, but I tell you what, I walked away from it. I was just like, and it happened so quickly too. I mean, they just all. I literally was drowning in the sea of like sorority girls that are just like rushing past me. I was trying to get out of the way because I was in the middle of the road, and I was trying to get out of the way, but like they kept like, it was like this whole stampede, and I was just like, I ended up like bumping into like a couple people just trying to get out. Um, and I gotta say this was not helpful for my agoraphobia. I will say that. So I was absolutely just kind of like stunned by that. And so if I'm a bit frozen today, I don't know what the right word is here. And it's probably because I'm still recovering from that. I'm still trying to figure out exactly how to process that. But when I say that this happened like so quickly, it happened so freaking quickly. By the time that they gathered together and went onto that main road, and by the time that they like passed me, it was literally like 10, 15 seconds. And by the time that they all left, dispersed, it was like probably about like maybe like 20, 30 seconds or so. Um, but in that moment, I was terrified. I was frightened. I didn't know what the heck was going on. Um, and it's probably something that I'm going to be processing with my team and the leaders on Monday, or tomorrow, rather, I guess, or today if you're listening to the video on Monday. But yeah, so I'm that was my Saturday this weekend. I hope you guys have been having a good weekend, or had a good weekend, rather, if you're listening to this throughout the week. But yeah, today I just wanted to talk about a few different things. This has been kind of, I feel like that running, like helping out with the sorority event was like a good fitting into that week, because I feel like there's just been a lot of things going on over the past couple of weeks. Just in general, just kind of like just kind of like absurd, like crazy things to kind of talk about. And there's a few things that I did want to talk about today. And I know that one of them is going to be a little bit sensitive, and I'm going to try my best, because I don't want to use certain words that are going to like trigger the system to ding the video or anything like that. But so if I'm trying to meticulously use like specific words to talk about the situation, it's because I'm trying not to use words that are gonna ding the video. But one thing I did want to talk about was is an event that happened here in Austin, Texas, back on August 11th. It was not this past Monday, but the Monday before, and there was an incident that happened at one of my local like retail stores. I'm not going to say the name of the chain because I don't want to. I don't know what the legal implications are. Again, I want to try to talk about this in a bit of a vague state if I can. But this retail chain is also a retail chain that I've worked for, and it was actually a very sad incident that occurred. It wasn't at my specific store that I worked for out here, but it was at a nearby location. And there was this guy, I'm not going to say his name, but there was this guy, about middle age. I think he was like 31, 30 years old, something like that. I think he actually has a kid and like an ex-girlfriend, but he, there was a guy who was recently arrested because, he was having mental health issues, and apparently he's had like a long history of like mental health concerns. And so he was actually arrested on quite a few different charges. So what ended up happening was that this person went to a Target store in the middle of the day and went up to one of the Target employees who was out getting carts. So they were just out getting carts, and this individual, he went up to the Target employee and ended up how do I say this, unaliving them with a weapon. And then what ended up happening is right after that, the person went to try to carjack a vehicle. So he stopped this vehicle, and this vehicle had three individuals in there. So it had a grandparent, a grandfather, a grandmother, and then their granddaughter, who was 4 years old. And this suspect went up to this vehicle. It was like a Toyota 4Runner, and tried to commandeer the vehicle. And the grandfather was kind of resisting a bit, and then the suspect ended up unaliving the the grandfather. And apparently that the the weapon that was used also affected the granddaughter who was in the back seat. So unfortunately, both of them had passed. The grandmother was trying to get out of the way and shield the granddaughter, but it wasn't enough. They weren't able to react in time, and then the suspect ended up pulling them out of the vehicle and took the vehicle and drove off. And apparently, after that, it's like a whole crazy sequence of events, right? And so after that, the suspect ended up going to this like construction site and tried to steal a water truck, and ended up assaulting one of the construction workers there. Apparently, the suspect couldn't get the water truck started, so they ended up leaving. But then they came back to the truck to pick up a book. They wouldn't specify what kind of book it was, but apparently he left the scene and then came back to get the book out of the water truck and then fled again. And then they ended up going and getting another vehicle. They ended up carjacking another person, and then they got that vehicle and they drove it around until they crashed it, and then somehow got away to the point to like it sounds like he was on foot and was just kind of running around kind of like the neighborhood where he was until police was able to apprehend him and catch him. And so that story in and of itself, I think, is wild. And my thoughts go out to that family and to everybody that was affected, the grandfather, the granddaughter, and the target employee as well. And so it's just heartbreaking to think about it too. Also considering that that used to be like one of my jobs, was going out and getting carts. So like for me, like to hear exactly what that happened, especially with the proximity, considering that this didn't happen too far away from where I used to work. And so it's just one of those things where it's just kind of like, ugh, it's such a shock, and so I think just hearing that story, it was shocking, because I remember, because I was at work when I found out about it. Like my sister and my mom ended up like just kind of blowing up my phone while I was at work, and I didn't see the messages until later, and because I didn't respond, they were like freaking out. And so, and then I remember looking at it and I was just like, that's just, I don't know. It's just disheartening. It's, shocking, and, it's terrifying to think of. And so all of that happened, right? And so I'm in the middle kind of like processing this story. And then, about a day later, I contact one of my friends, who works at, my store, not this store where this incident took place. And I asked them about kind of like what's going on, like how is, our store kind of like responding to it. And what I found out was, just information that was kind of disturbing to me. And they informed me that, one, they had been contacting, our store had been contacting our employees to try to encourage our employees to go over to that store that was affected, where this incident took place, to help them out so that they could keep the store open, keep it running, and allow people to, just so people can go and pick up their online orders or go in and shop and things like that. Because apparently it sounds like the store that was affected, none of their employees wanted to go into work the next day or the next few days and work. Rightfully so, right? That's an incredibly traumatic experience. Like, not just considering the fact that that incident took place there and all that madness that happened there, but also they lost one of their employees, one of their friends, their coworkers, right? And just considering like the level of trauma there, it's like you would think that as that store, what you would want to do is you would want to just close the store down, put the people that were scheduled to work over the next 3 to 5 days at least on paid leave, and just keep the store closed. Cancel any kind of like online orders that you had, just cancel it. Like, but it's just that's not what they wanted to do. Apparently that store wanted to stay open, keep it running, and so they were just trying to pull employees from different Target stores to go over there. I guess I was going to say I guess I was trying to conceal the store, but you could figure it out anyway from the news story. But it was Target, and so they wanted to pull employees from like other like nearby like Target stores to go over there, and I thought that was crazy. That was the first thing that I thought that I heard, and to me it was just absurd. Just from a trauma standpoint, that is one of the like worst things that I feel like you could do for your employees. From like a corporate perspective, like I get it. I understand you want to, profits are important, especially for that company that is reeling right now. Let's be honest, that company is reeling. I mean, they just lost their CEO because of constant quarterly or a lack of constant profits that are being reported on a quarterly basis. They've been struggling for a very long time, and I think a lot of it goes back to a lot of people are citing the swaying away from like the DEI advocation efforts. They're citing that as like a primary reason. Also, there's the boycotts as well, but I think it's just in general. Like I think Target, ever since COVID, really they've been kind of struggling. During COVID, they were doing fantastic. Everybody was going there to buy toilet papers, and and so it was they were doing fantastic during that era, but they've really kind of struggled since as a company, in terms of their stock price, but then also just in terms of just retaining a lot of their customer base. I think that's also in part because of inflation too. Prices have gotten so high, and Target just prices things at an insane level. It's actually crazy. As an employee, there were things that I could literally go next door to Walmart and get cheaper at Walmart than if I were to get the same product at Target using my employee discount and a red card discount. It's crazy. Anyway, I don't want to digress here, but I think it's crazy that that's the approach that we're taking, right? I think it's crazy that we're going to be asking our employees after an event like that to just go to the store and put ourselves in this position, because what you're doing is that you're affecting you're putting employees at other stores in a very uncomfortable like situation. Now you're being asked by your leaders to go to a store where a significant event just happened, a very significant traumatic event happened, literally the day after it happened too. This isn't like a week later or anything like that to catch up on like loss of work or anything like that. It's literally the day after it happened. They started making these calls to employees at other stores to try to get the store where this incident took place to get the people's staff. And I just think it's crazy, because not only is your current store that was affected by this incident now having developing basically being presented with a traumatic event and having to cope with that. Now you're asking other people to go to that store, be in that environment, and be affected by that in a somewhat similar kind of way. It's very uncomfortable. I was happy to hear that my friend at my store told me that nobody had accepted, from our store at least, had accepted their offer. So I'm hoping that store ended up, I'm hoping that they either reduced their hours or just closed down, really. I hope that they decided to just close their store, pay the people that were scheduled to work, just pay them for their shifts, and then close it down for like at least 3 to 5 days, preferably like 7 days. And then reopen. But and then also offer like counseling services, make sure that they're connected with counseling services and things like that, and counselors. And I think that that's really important. But I just think that was a swing and a miss from that store standpoint. I think it's also a swing and a miss from the district standpoint too. I think that's something where the district manager probably should have stepped in and been like, no, let's not do that. I think they should have really taken more ownership of it and tried to take a more trauma informed approach, just to protect the safety and wellness of those individuals, especially if you lost a team member, especially if you lost an employee in that situation. Like, you need to take those steps to make sure that, like, to show that you, not just like because it's obviously it's the right thing to do to, but it's also just to make sure that, like, convey the message to your team, like, we care about you, we care about your health, we care about your wellness, which is something that they always like say, but like, actions are louder than words, right? And I think here in this instance, like, I think this really just goes to show that, like, those are just words and they're not, that's not what they actually truly believe. Because at the end of the day, they can say all those things, but if they're going to be more motivated by profit than by, like, their care for their employees, like, wellness, I think that just speaks to, like, where they actually stand on that issue. So that was like a concern of mine. And so I ended up talking to my friend a little bit further about this. And then I learned, like, more kind of disturbing information as it relates to the store that I work at. And what ended up happening was, according to this person and their close friend who was working a shift, my friend was not working during this. It was their close friend who was working and reported this information. And I've worked with them too, and I know them to be a very reliable person. And they had talked about this before this other incident occurred. And they ended up telling me that there was literally, like, it was about 3 to 4 days prior to the previous incident. There was an incident at our store that happened, like, kind of late at night. It was before closing, but it was late at night. So that's what they described it. So it was probably around 9 or 10 o'clock, somewhere around then. And what ended up happening was that they found there was this person in a truck that was driving around in our store's parking lot, just driving in circles for about 15, 20 minutes or so. They were just driving in circles, and apparently they were waving a weapon outside of their window, and they were, like, shouting, incoherently. There were a couple people that, like, kind of peeked outside. They could hear him shouting outside the window, but couldn't really tell exactly what they were saying. There was one person that reported saying that they thought they saw, like, a specific type of weapon in the, like, front passenger seat of their car. I don't know if I necessarily believe that, but it was clear that they were waving a weapon outside their window because this was also caught on security footage. So after this incident started to take place, the employees reported it to security. Security went out there to verify it was happening. They went to go look at cameras, apparently, and they went to go look at exactly if they could get information. They called the police, and they were basically just waiting for police to arrive, right? So at this point, what we know is that there is a person driving around in a vehicle, just doing loops in the parking lot right outside the Target store, and they're waving a weapon around, shouting incoherently, right? And they've verified it is a weapon. And so they call the police, and they're waiting for police. At that point, I'm kind of curious what you guys think would happen. So I'm kind of curious. Pause this video, think about it, and then resume the video, like, once you feel like would be an appropriate response. All right. And so now what ended up happening is that the managers that were on duty, including our HR person, ended up they became aware of the report. They did not lock down the store because, quote unquote, the suspect did not enter the store. Because the person that was in that vehicle waving a weapon around, driving in loops around the parking lot outside, did not step inside the store, it did not warrant a lockdown of the store. And a lockdown would entail literally locking all the doors so that nobody can come in or out. And the reason for that, the reason why that's important is because we're also open at the time. So we had guests that were still inside the store that could have just left to go out into the parking lot and be subjected to any kind of like harm out there, right? It's not just like guests, but then also like employees, staff, things like that. So that to me is just wild. It is wild to think that the reason why they didn't lock down the store was because the suspect had not entered the store. So had the suspect entered the store, then they would have gone on lockdown. Then they would have locked all the doors. To me, that makes no sense. So they're going to monitor. Their decision making is, okay, there's a crazy person outside waving a gun, threatening harm. We're not going to lock down the doors because they have not entered the store yet. It does not warrant a lockdown until they enter the store. So when we're going to monitor the situation, if they enter the store, we'll lock the doors down. One, how are you going to do that? If you see them come inside the store, then you're going to go lock all the doors? How are you going to have time to do that? You're not going to have the emotional calmness to be able to do that. Everybody's going to flee in panic. That's what's going to end up happening. Like, this is a preventative measure that you could have taken. Lock the doors. Just make sure that nobody goes out or in. So it just bothers me. And then also it's like, if you're waiting until they come inside the building to lock everything down, now assuming that you're able to get all those doors locked after that individual comes inside the building, now you're trapping everybody in that store with the person with the weapon. So it's like, what? I don't understand the logic here. I do not understand the logic. And the sad thing is, like, this retailer goes, we have to do the same active, I don't want to say this word. It's the risk. I'll just refer to it as active risk situation. We have to do this specific training that will prepare us for events like this every quarter, because they are very big on making sure that we're prepared for situations like that. Now, to be fair, the training that I receive as a part of that, it's more of kind of like the of what happens after the store goes into lockdown, not what leads up to putting the store in lockdown. That's more, that kind of training is reserved more for like managerial people, right? So I've never received any training about exactly what would put the store into lockdown, what would qualify. It's just more of the training that I receive is just how would we react to it if it went into lockdown, right? So I can't speak to exactly the training that they received, but the comment that was made was, because they didn't enter the store, we are not going into lockdown. I think that is just bizarre. That is bizarre to me. I think it's wild, and I think it's reckless. I think it's endangering not just the employees, the staff there, the vendors. It's also endangering like the guests that are there too. If I'm a guest there and I'm just shopping and something like that were to happen, if they were able to walk in and there was not a preventative measure that they could have taken, and that escalates, like, one, for sure, I'm never going to that company again. I can never trust that company again. I can't trust them at that local store. I can't trust them, that corporation. It's just mind-boggling to me. It really is. It is. I still cannot comprehend it. And so, anyway, so that's that really kind of bothered a lot of the staff, especially the staff that were working there that night. And that's the information that was relayed to me. And so I talked to my friend and they told me that all that happened, and then I asked them, I'm like, okay, well, uh, I know that the HR person was on staff. Like, that's a clear kind of like, what the hell kind of moment. But what about like the store director? What about the person that's above them? Like, how did they respond to this situation? And what I was informed was that the store director basically downplayed the situation, claiming, quote unquote, it was only a hand weapon. I'm trying to be very selective of the words, but they said it was a quote unquote hand weapon. Um, you can probably replace one part of that word with the other of what I'm actually trying, or what you may think that I'm actually trying to say, but that was the reason for them downplaying, and they were just trying to honestly, and to be honest, like based off of my interactions, it makes sense to me. Like that's the kind of reaction I would expect from that person based off of my like 3 years working for that person. And so that bothered me. It's honestly, it's a mind fuck. It is wild to think that that happened. It was allowed to happen, and but it's not just that initial like inciting event, but it's also, to me, what's most disturbing is the response to that, and then the aftermath where it's just downplaying it. And then so what ended up happening is that they called police. By the time police got to the store, the person had drove off, and they weren't able to find him. And so they really just kind of tried to just downplay it. Nobody was physically hurt from the situation. Obviously, there's emotional damage from the people that were involved and witnessed it specifically, but it's terrifying to think. And that happened 3 days prior to this initial event that I was telling you about the suspect. And what was relayed to me was that the person who was working there that night, not the managers, but one of the just a regular team member, said that they think that it was the same person that ended up going on to commit those acts at the other store a few days later. I can't corroborate that. There's been no reported information to suggest that. But they said that based off of like, what they had seen, it looked like a similar person. So it's really kind of bizarre to think about that happening, but also, just that in and of itself is just terrifying. It's shocking. And I think what just hurts the most out of that is the response, the very, very poor response. It is it is mind-boggling to me. I think if there's anything that I can take away from this that's positive, is that I am very grateful to not be there working currently, because I just would not feel safe. I would not feel safe, and I was happy to hear that my friend was, and some of the other people that were working there were already in the process of like getting like looking at other jobs and going through that process and leaving. So I told them, I stressed to them, I'm like, you have to report that. You have to report that to corporate. That's a blatant. Like, you can't go to anybody at the store level. I mean, you have the HR person who was like the who was working that night, closing that night, and then you had the store director who was aware of the situation and again try to downplay it. At that point, you go to either the district manager or you just go to corporate. And I think that I hope, and I really try to stress, and I'm like, I understand like your fear of like retaliation and things of that sort, whether that's just through like being fired, loss of employment, or like reduced hours, things like that, like, because it can be a very petty. There's some good people that work there, including like some managers, but it's also one of those things, like anywhere really in retail, it's like, you can get some people that are very petty and will do things to try to weed people out purposely, and I think it's really messed up. So I told my friend, I was like, just please strongly encourage anybody that feels comfortable to report that to corporate and or the district manager, to let them know, especially considering if there is a link between this event and the succeeding events like that happened a few days later. Like, certainly you need to report that, and you need it. Honestly, it should be relayed to the authorities just to see if they can do anything, if they can find any kind of if they can do any investigation that might help them with their case. So I think that was wild. That's something that's kind of like stuck on my, it's been stuck in my mind really for the past like week or two. Because I've just kind of like I've been kind of like racing through my head, like, what if I was there in that situation? Because I used to be like one of the people that would go out and get carts and things like that, or delivering like online orders to the parking lot. And so it's just it's shocking, it's terrifying to think about. But I think that's just also it's just kind of the world that we live in nowadays, unfortunately. And I don't want to get too like political on these things, but I do think that it's something that does need to be addressed, and I think there's a lot of resources that do need to be made more accessible to people, good quality resources that are also made that are more accessible. Apparently, this suspect had a long string of mental health concerns, and it was wild. Apparently, also, just as a side note, the person was asked why he did those things, and their reason was, quote unquote, because I am Jesus, is what he said. That is what he said. He said, because I am Jesus. So you can tell, like, obviously, just based off of that remark alone, there's something going on, and there needs to be more kind of like preventative like interventions that take place so that we don't get to this point. And if we do get to a point like this, like, we also need to be like trained and ready to take action, preventative action, to protect the safety and wellness of everyone around us. And so I don't know, that's a story that's just been kind of sticking on my mind. It's just hard for me to not think about, because that's something, at least at our store, it could have like escalated into something way worse than it ended up being. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still really bad, but it could have, as indicated by the succeeding event, like, it's something that could have escalated even worse. But I think that's just one of those things. To me, it's just, I think it's just I just feel like this world is I don't know if this is like the pessimist in me, if it's just me being cynical in nature, but I just feel like the world is becoming a bit less humane. I think that's in part because we've been kind of desensitized to situations like that, and so it's just I just think that we are kind of living in a less humane kind of world. And I think, again, like, I think our desensitization to some of these things is contributing to that for sure. And speaking of living in a less humane world, ironically, one of the one of the topics that I wanted to talk about today too was that I saw this news article earlier this week. It was on Twitter, and I'm not gonna lie, when I first saw it, I was very skeptical. I'm like, this is fake news. I was like, this is not true, is it? Apparently, there is a company in China called, please bear with me if I get this wrong. I believe that the name of the company is called Kaiwa Technology, and basically, this is a Chinese company that is developing a humanoid, quote unquote, gestation robot with an artificial womb that is designed to carry a fetus for 9 months before giving birth to a baby, with the goal of creating a pregnancy alternative for infertile couples and potentially avoiding pregnancy risk for women. So, the TLDR is that they're creating an AI robot that will give birth to humans. What? What are we doing? What is this? Like, I was so, like, I was flabbergasted when I first read the headline. I'm like, there's no way. This has got to be like an exaggeration. There's no way that like this is becoming a thing. This is literally just clickbait. And I did a little bit of research into it, and I gotta say, it's checking out from what I am seeing. It is checking out, and I think there's absolutely. I have mixed feelings on it. Like this is one of those things where I feel like it's designed with the intention to help, but I think it's certainly one of those things where I feel it's like we can do it, but should we do it kind of situations. I see the need for interventions or developing like procedures to assist, couples who are like infertile, having difficulty like um uh either concerns about pregnancy or getting pregnant, things like that. Like I see like the need for like support and services for that can help with that. This is one of those things where I just feel like it's I don't know what the true effect is going to be from this. And right now, I will say it does seem like the details specifically regarding like the fertilization and the exact like mechanics of the machine are a little bit kind of unclear. It does sound like the design of this system is aiming to kind of mimic the entire pregnancy journey through a system where the fetus receives like nutrients from like a tube, and they expect to have a prototype expected by 2026, which is that's really soon. If you think about it, that's really soon. If we have a prototype for an AI robot that can carry a fetus for 9 months and give birth to it, and you have a prototype for that by next year, I mean, that could be January. That's literally 5 months from now. That's wild. Actually, less than that. 4 months from now. This is end of August. And so it just brings like an interesting question to me. It's like, again, like I said, this is like one of those things where it's just like, yes, we may be able to do this, but like, should we? And I hear the concerns about, why. I guess I hear the reasons for like uh, why this would be a need, or why this would be something that would be developed. I just have some kind of concerns about what that would actually result in. Um, so just to give kind of like just a just kind of brief overview of like what they have presented so far about like how this would work. So this is referred to as a quote unquote gestation robot. And so it's supposed to have like this humanoid kind of design, and this kind of figure. And so it's actually supposed to be designed to like have the humanoid kind of robotic development, kind of like be able to interact with like humans. And it's just got this like like a fully functioning artificial womb embedded in its abdomen. And like I said, it's got like this the fetus would be hosted inside the womb, and there will be this like this tube that would deliver nutrients to the womb, and the fetus would receive those nutrients through the tube. And so this robot would be intended to kind of like replicate that entire pregnancy process, and carrying the fetus for like 9 to 10 months, right? And then the ultimate goal is to allow that robot to deliver a live baby, right? And I just think that is that is so it's just so out there. And I get it, the goal of this is to be like an alternative for couples who are infertile, and or having difficulties becoming pregnant, or are concerned about like pregnancy risk, things like that. But I also think there's a plethora of ethical concerns about this. I think for me, I think that one of those ethical concerns is really the commodification uh, of really just human life, just babies in general, and then also for like I feel like my concern is that I think that once we start to engage in that kind of behavior. And listen, if this thing starts, like it's not stopping. It's going to be a thing. There's going to be a money put into research for it, development of it. It's not going to be one of those things that would, like, once it starts, and if there's a little bit of success for it, or if they determine that there is some need for it, certainly they're going to pump money into it. They are going to flush it out, develop the systems, and try to monetize it, right? And I think my concern is that I think that ultimately it's going to develop into a situation where it feels very, I don't know what the right word is, but it feels very transactional. I feel like it's going to get to a point to where it's like we're kind of looking at it's dehumanizing in a sense, because it's, well, it's a baby that's being carried to term with by a robot. And I think it's just, I think it's going to get to the point to where, having a baby is going to be more kind of like a transactional kind of like process. And I think that that's a very, very slippery slope that we would go down. And I think that could also lead to like concerns about, like, this is just me being also like super like pessimistic and cynical too. But I do think this is like, this is something that could lead to like the development of like black markets for like, human parts and selling babies. And, like, I think this is just, if this is something that becomes like normalized, and if it's something that becomes further developed, my concern is again, like, just this overall, this sense of like commodification of human life, and selling babies, selling selling people's embryos, or I just think it's I think it's just I think it's concerning. I do think that is a little bit concerning. Actually, not a little bit. I think it's a lot concerning. I think it's a lot concerning. I think you're creating a market there that's it's going to be just very unethical. I also think, just also in addition to that, it's just this fact that I think there is something like special between like a mother and their child's that connection, right? And I think there's just something there. And I know that they say that they are trying to do what they can to make these robotics kind of mimic kind of like human like interactions with like the fetus that they're carrying, to kind of replicate that. I just don't think that's something that you can replicate. I just don't. I think that just so unique that mother child bond, from like just a bunch of like research that I've read, and I just feel like it's just something that you can't replicate. I think it's just so unique. And I'm interested in technology, and to see kind of like how technology can like improve things and shape our lives. This is one of those things where I'm like, I don't think we need that technology. Let's find a different path. I just don't think that my two primary concerns are, I think it's going to make like human life more transactional. It's going to commodify human life. I think it's going to lead to like the development of like black markets for like, selling like embryos, or, I just, I think that's terrifying to think about. I also think that I think it's just like how is that child going to develop? Like, what is that going to look like? I mean, if you don't have that like true like human, mother and child kind of like connection, like how's that going to affect the baby as they go through those like early stages of life? How is that going to affect the way that they develop connections with their caregivers, their parents, and then also just socially too? Like, what is there going to be like a more kind of like emotional like standpoint? Like, I don't, it's just it's just bizarre. It's bizarre for me to think about. And it's interesting too. It's like, if you to me, this just reminds me, like, if you know me, I'm a big fan of aliens. I like aliens. I think they're cool. One of the thing about that is commonly referred to as like the green aliens or the gray aliens. Actually, it's not the green, it's the grays. Gray aliens, if you're familiar, there's a lot of like there's a lot of like kind of like conspiracy theories talking about kind of what exactly like gray aliens are. And just to put it bluntly, a lot of people speculate that gray aliens are kind of like some like evolved form of like humans as they are today, but in a very in a very far future from us. And they've developed, basically grays are pretty much a lot of people believe that grays are kind of like serving kind of like a higher kind of like being, and these grays are very much void of like an emotional kind of um component. They're very much they're more kind of like cerebral in nature, and they don't really have that kind of like emotional, compassionate kind of like element to them. And so it just makes me think, like, is this the beginning of that? Like, are we at that stage where we start developing humans? We start having humans birthed from AI robots, and is that what ends up? Is this like the first step into becoming, for us humans to become the grays? Like, is this the world that we're living in? It's actually wild to think about. Like, I cannot. It's just for me, it's just I'm just it's just something that's been kind of sitting with me for the past few days, and it just makes me wonder, like, is this how we become the grays? Is this how we evolve? Is this the next stage of human evolution? Is literally just, we're essentially just become like pods being birthed in pods? Like, is that what it is? Is this like, is this what we're going to become? I don't know if anybody of you, if any of you have seen this movie. It's probably before a lot of y'all's time, but it came out in 2004, 2005. I can't remember. It's directed by Michael Bay, but it's called The Island, and it's got Scarlett Johansson and Ewan McGregor and a few other people in it. It's a really good movie. For the longest time, it was on YouTube for free. You could watch it on YouTube for free, but you have some ads. So if you want, you can go check it out after this video or whatever. But I highly recommend the movie. It's actually a pretty good movie. But this article just made me think about that. And I don't want to get into spoiler territory for that movie, but it does make me think that, like, that world could be what we live in. And oh gosh, I really want to go to draw some like parallels, some comparisons. I'll tell you what, I may follow up on this in the next episode, the next podcast episode. I don't, because I want to give you guys a chance to watch that movie. I highly recommend, just go and watch that movie, and I think you'll probably understand exactly kind of like what I'm getting at. But I do feel like this could be, having an AI robot taking delivering hosting a fetus and giving birth to a baby. I think that's this could be like the next step into the world that is created by that movie, The Island. Again, look it up. It's called The Island, directed by Michael Bay. I think it's like 2004, 2005. It's got Ewan McGregor, Scarlett Johansson. It's a really good movie. It's actually a really good movie. I think it's also like one of the most underrated movies of like the early 2000s. I highly recommend it. Definitely go check it out. And if you do go check it out, let me know in the comments if you think that what you think about the movie, and if you see that world being created as a result of something like this, having an AI robot give birth to a baby. I just think that is just wild to me. That is just wild. And again, I think this is just kind of, it's just, again, this is just another one of those things where it's like, I feel like we're just, maybe this is just like the way my algorithms are being tailored towards me, because this is the kind of like content that I'm like engaging in, like reading and reading about, clicking on, and things like that. But I really feel like we're living in a world that's just becoming increasingly dehumanizing. Like, we're just becoming less humane, less compassionate, less empathetic towards like other people and things like that, and we're really just kind of like living in our own kind of like worlds. And another thing that kind of like has made me kind of like think about things like that this week is talking about streaming news. Is There was a streamer that goes by the name NinaDaddy. So she's a content creator. She does a lot of like kind of like IRL stuff. I've seen her mostly just from like collaborations with like people like Agent, Extra Emily. She was big at Streamer University. I think she really kind of like popped off there. But she was recently in there's this kind of like drama between NinaDaddy and another creator by the name of Ash Alk. I'm not too familiar with Ash Alk's content. I do believe that Ash was also at Streamer University, I think I think that's where they met each other. I could be wrong about that. But they did a collab stream a few days ago. And they basically, I didn't see the full stream. I did see a bunch of different clips, but it sounds like they basically handcuffed themselves to each other, and they just kind of walked around and did like an IRL stream, going to like restaurants, shopping, things like that together. But those two personalities don't really kind of like mesh all that well, which is like where like that's kind of like the point of that stream, and that's where like that source of entertainment comes from, is like you just see the clash of these two personalities while they're like handcuffed to each other, right? And there was this clip where they were both eating at a restaurant. I believe it was Canva. So they're having like, they both had these like bowls of salad, right? And they're sitting down at this little booth, and Ash gets a comment from is it Plaque Boy Max? I can't remember his name. He's from FaZe. He recently left FaZe. And Max messaged Ash on Ash's stream and said, "Hey, if you get rid of Nina's food on stream, I'll gift you 100 subs," right? And 100 subs, 6 times 100, $600, assuming that they don't have a Twitch deal for a 70-30 split, that's going to be like a 50-50. So, $600 divided by 2, that's about $300. So basically offering $300 for Ash to trash Nina's food so she can't eat. And Ash saw the message and immediately started to try to subtly inform Nina that kind of like prepare her to prepare for the imminent loss of their food. And so Nina was basically kind of just saying like, basically Ash was saying comments like, "Oh, you don't really want to eat, right? You're not really hungry, right?" Things like that, to try to prime her for what Ash was about to do. And Nina was like, "No, I'm hungry. I'm eating my food." And then it got to a point where Ash decided, I've got to act on this. I want those 100 gifted subs, right? So what Ash does is he's got this bag that's right next to him, this like empty bag. He reaches over with his free hand over to Nina's salad bowl and literally just grabs handfuls of Nina's salad and throws it into the bag. He takes like 3 or 4, big chunks of Nina's bowl and puts it into the bag and tries to stand up and try to like, just kind of stand up and like walk away. Nina gets upset. She freezes. She doesn't know what to do, trying to comprehend the situation, stares at the camera so blankly, and you could tell like something was a brewing. And so she reacts and she gets upset, rightfully so. I'd be pissed. And so what she ended up doing was she flipped over the table and basically just started yelling at Ash, and then found out that he was doing it for gifted subs, for like 100 gifted subs. And then when she found out, she was like even more irate, which honestly, I'm in her camp. I would agree. I'd be pissed too. I get it. It's content. I get it. At the end of the day, you're there to be entertaining. You're there to provide content. But I think there's also this line of like, again, like we gotta be like respectful as humans. We gotta be kind of compassionate and empathetic towards people. And I think this is just one of those things where it's just obnoxious behavior. And I don't know, to be honest, like even now, like I still don't really know who I kind of like blame this situation. I don't know if I blame Ash for kind of like um for committing that action, or if it's more so Max for trying to encourage that kind of behavior. I think it's more of a shared responsibility there. Um, but I know Nina was really upset after that encounter, and basically right after that, she was running around trying to figure out a way to, because they didn't have the keys for the handcuffs, so they went around trying to figure out ways to break the handcuffs apart. They were trying to like use chairs to like bust open the handcuff chains. They were trying to. I think they eventually found like a construction worker, and this is like late at night too. So they eventually found like a construction worker like just off the street, and they just had like this giant like kind of like nail like this like kind of like crowbar like thing, and ended up just like crushing the link. And as soon as the handcuffs separated, they went their own separate ways. Nina and it ended up going on her stream, and just kind of like talking about the situation and how people specifically in LA are very much as she puts it, quote unquote dick riders, and they will literally sell their soul for anything. And I think that kind of just goes to, I think that that's really kind of the embodiment of a lot of like IRL streamers that are like kind of like up and coming like nowadays. I think you look at IRL streamers now versus kind of like IRL streamers like 5 years ago, 5 years ago, is very different. I think a lot of people, 3 to 5 years ago, that were doing like a lot of like IRL stuff. I think there just wasn't that kind of like level of like greed or obnoxiousness for like content like that. But I think especially with like a younger generation, it's a lot of people see, they look for opportunities to provide like that kind of like shocking clip. And I think that kind of speaks to like kind of, I guess, the need for like younger up and coming streamers to do that, because the streaming spaces are so saturated. They're so saturated. You have to do things that are going to stand out. And I think people will just resort to like desperate measures like that. And I think that because of their desperation to find like those kinds of like that kind of clip that really kind of like pops like that, I feel like people are just a lot more comfortable with dehumanizing like other people, literally just using other people for content, specifically for content. And I think that's a scary kind of thing. It's something that I don't like seeing in the streaming space, because I think it's a very slippery slope, and I think it's very disrespectful to be quite honest. And I'm just really sad to see. And I think I see a lot of that. I'm not saying that the older generation like IRL streamers don't do that, but I do see a lot more of that in the younger generation. It's very much like, I'm going to create chaos to create the most amount of engagement that I can get, because I'm going to make money off of this. And I think that and I think that's kind of like what Nina was kind of getting at with some of her feedback or her response to the situation, and I can totally see that. And that's just something that that I'm very concerned about for like the future of streaming. I feel like a lot of the more kind of like level-headed like IRL streamers, but also just main big players in this space, are, you just didn't really see, you just don't really see much of that from anybody. But now it's just, you just see a lot of I don't know. I feel like maybe it's just, again, maybe it's just me being pessimistic. Maybe it's just me being cynical. Maybe it's the algorithm. Maybe that's just because of the stuff that captures my attention. I engage with it. I watch it on the social platforms and things like that. But and maybe maybe I'm only seeing that part because that's what I'm engaging with, and the algorithm's being, tailoring that towards me. But I fear that that's kind of like where like a lot of like content creation, especially with like a younger generation, is going. I don't like that. I don't like it. I like, I can respect, people going out there and getting outside of their comfort zone and to try new things, and really just to really do what they can to to be entertaining. Like I respect that element of it, I guess. But I don't respect any of the behaviors that are kind of like, that involve like dehumanizing somebody else, using somebody else for like just content purposes. Like, it just feels very degrading. It feels very disrespectful, and it's just something where I just don't think that I, I I'm just concerned. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the future of streaming. But yeah. So yeah. I did want to talk about that just because I am kind of curious. I'm kind of curious like what you guys think about that. Like, do you think that this is do you see this as an issue? Like, do you also see that? Is so like, are you concerned about it? Is that kind of like normal kind of like content? Are you kind of like bothered by it? Are you not bothered by it? I'm kind of curious, but yeah. So I know that these topics have not been the most kind of uplifting kind of stories. But I feel like these are all kind of like really these are all kind of things that have I feel like there's been like kind of a common theme amongst all these things throughout this week. This has really just been kind of like a week where I've been kind of like in shock, honestly. I've just been shocked, just processing things, whether it's being surviving a stampede of sorority girls um running past me, dealing with that whole Target stuff, those incidents, and just AI robots giving birth, and just this dehumanizing like people in content for streaming. I don't know, but if there's anything that stuck out here to you guys, feel free to let me know in the comments. Let me know what you guys think about any of this stuff. I'd be curious to hear your opinion, your feedback on things. If there's anything that you want me to talk about in like a future episode, or any kind of like suggestions that you have, feel free to let me know. We release new episodes every Monday. And so, but yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning into that first episode. Thank you for tuning into this episode. I appreciate it. Again, if you like this video, if you like this podcast, if you want to see more episodes, make sure you click on the like button, hit subscribe, and if you like, feel free to let me know in the comments what you think. Certainly, all of those things certainly help out the channel. They help out the video. They help with reach. So I do appreciate anybody that does engage, whether you're just listening or lurking. Just know that I see you. I appreciate you, and thank you so much. But that's gonna be it for this episode, and I'll see you guys next week. Take care.